So yeah, the first thing I was going to bring up is the reason I was asking you about tools and things is my computer broke again. All my crappy computers that I buy always break. And I was kind of considering like, hey, do I really need a computer that bad? Like, I do writing on my phone. Maybe I'll just chill and not have a computer for a bit. But then I was like, oh, wait, though. The Calling Home podcast where we watch old TV. What would I can't edit this podcast without a computer. But I got a used crappy computer at Digital World for like $200. Like, it's garbage, but that's pretty cheap. So that'll do. But yeah, I was also thinking, since we've been kind of just, we're watching old TV in general, but kind of going with the flow a little bit. So just because of that little random trilogy of Star Trek actors was kind of dragging us further forward into the 50s. We were up to like the late 50s. So I was like, is this, should I just go with this flow? Should we skip ahead a little bit quicker, or should we go back to the real early 50s like we were at? So I was like, well, let me just look down the list and just see what's there, see what I missed. And I found a different list than last time. And that's one thing that's weird about looking up these old TV shows is, I don't know, it's just hard to find a definitive list of which shows started when. Because I was looking back, okay, here's 1950, here's 1951, and I saw I Love Lucy. How in the hell did I miss I Love Lucy? Like we can't skip I Love Lucy. Yeah, that's insanely famous.
Not. Well, and it went on for, I don't know how long I Love Lucy went on for, but probably into the late 50s anyway, and then there was the Lucy show, and there was all these spin-offs that Lucy was in.
Right.
So do you have an I Love Lucy?
Yeah, well, the first thing, before I even looked up anything official, is that's one thing that's neat about doing this archaeology, is you can get a sense of what shows are still valuable to the corporation and which ones aren't. Because most of these shows, I'm just lucky I can find them at all. But then when you do, they're just on YouTube or wherever. They're just kicking around. No one cares about them. Where if you search for I Love Lucy, good fucking luck, man. CBS is still selling this thing on DVD or whatever, or streaming sites or whatever. They've definitely got people paying attention that if someone uploads to the internet, they take it down. Because I couldn't find any episodes of I Love Lucy, unless I paid for them, which really? I'm not going to do that.
I'm surprised. When I was in university, some channel was showing them, and I hadn't seen those.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we had Canadian TV. When I was in university, one of the shows, CTV, CBC, one of them was showing them regularly, like daily. So I got to see a whole lot of them then. And they were good, really good.
Yeah, and I think that still is happening. Like, they're still kind of like slowly colorizing them and putting them out once in a while. And like, it's still a thing that, is still economically viable. So it's not just in this trash heap of the past. Like, it's still a thing. So, what I like, because I found like one episode finally, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Why is there only one episode? The Lucy show wasn't that hard to find, but I Love Lucy was. But I was like, here's one episode, but it only has 100 views. What's going on here? And it's because it was like a Spanish dub. Oh. So I guess whoever was searching from CBS was like, yeah, leave that one. Who cares? That's not worth us like copyright striking it. So what I did is just what I do for everything is, it's not hard to steal things in the modern age. There's the Pirate Bay and torrents, and, it's like illegal. You're not supposed to use it. But I haven't ever had to go to those lengths before. But with I Love Lucy, I did. So I stole the shit out of this show. Like, I found on there, it's a whole different world of piracy. Like, the whole thing is there. So I just grabbed the first episode, and I also found the pilot and the unaired pilot, and I think we should watch that too just to check it out.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But what's so interesting about the pilot is they thought it was gone. Like, no one could find it. I think Lucy and Desi were both dead before this other old lady came forward and was like, hey, my husband was an extra, or like just a bit actor on I Love Lucy, showed up in a few episodes, but he was friends with Lucy and Desi. And they gave him a copy of this pilot, and I have it if you want it. This was like 1990. Uh-huh. And CBS was like, holy shit, like that's literally the only copy. Thank you, old lady. And then they put it on the DVD set. So that's kind of neat. So we got that too. So I was thinking we could watch the real first episode first, and then just watch the pilot and see what that's like.
Sure. Okay. All right. Looking forward to this one.
So, and then the stuff I looked up is, just some interesting little factoids. So it ran from 1951 to 1957, and like you said, then there was many other shows. There was like a variety hour after that, and then the Lucy show after they got divorced and whatever, different things. of its 6 seasons, for 4 of those seasons, it was the most watched show in the United States. And it was the first show to end its run as the top show. And only 2 other shows ever did that. Andy Griffith in 1968 and Seinfeld in 1998. Those are it. Those are the only shows that ever had the, what would even be the word? Just the awesomeness to be like, we're on top and
Yeah, we're on
done.
top and we're done.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing this.
Lucille Ball was a model before she got into acting, which, and they mentioned in this wiki article about her striking beauty. It's weird when put next to her physical comedy. And I just think that was surprising because maybe I'm just more used to the later Lucy. I didn't think of her as being so beautiful.
And I never did either, but I saw her in an old movie. I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe 1930, 1928, 1930.
Right.
And yeah, she was a nice looking babe, tall, thin, flaming red hair. Yeah, I could see her being a model, and strikingly beautiful. And in this part that she played in this movie, it was something like, I can't say it was a model, but it was something like that, like somebody trying to make it big in Hollywood, that sort of thing. And very, not the comedy role that she played in I Love Lucy. And I was quite surprised to say, I said, yeah, you know what? And then I saw some I Love Lucy's after that. And then I noticed, you know what? Yeah, she's really quite a nice looking woman. But when you think she's just comedy and goofiness is what you equate with her. That's what you see until somebody draws that other stuff to your attention, and then you say, okay, she's a babe too.
I guess that is weird though too, right? Where it is being good looking is not really, it's of all the various positive attributes you could have, it's not one of the greater ones because it is so fleeting. She had this huge long career for decades and decades, and she was only hot for a little tiny bit at the start. Who cares?
And when she plays Lucille Ball or Lucille Ricardo, when she plays that part, she does not play up on being attractive or anything. She's just goofy Lucy.
Yeah, definitely a better way to go. Yeah, so it's a pretty impressive little career to just streamline it where, yeah, she was a model, and then she became an extra in movies and then worked up to like small roles and then co-star. And she was one of the early like B-movie queens, which when we think of that term now, like scream queens and stuff, B-movies are strictly horror movies. But back then, B-movies were actual movies. They just weren't the top movies. But she could never quite break through to become a lead in film, so she moved over to TV. Clearly the right move, became a legend, all that. And then Desi Arnaz was a similar, probably even a more impressive story, where he was when she met him, he was a band leader on Broadway, was already doing well, but he was one of these like classic American stories of like came over when he was like 16, couldn't speak English, and built this whole life. And it's nice, especially because last week I was ragging on America for their guns and their crappy craziness. But it is nice that side of America. Like it really is the only country where you can have that kind of story, where you can be the immigrant.
Come from nothing and really build yourself up to something.
Yeah. So then, of course, just because of the bigoted world of the past, despite the fact that they were both pretty successful and both pretty famous, and they pitched this idea for their show, and CBS didn't want to do it because they didn't believe that audiences would accept a marriage between an American white woman and a Cuban man. And it's so crazy because, like, that's so absurd. But you know that, at least nowadays, even if you thought that, you'd have to tiptoe around it, where I'm sure they just openly had meetings where they're like, well, this is patently absurd and we're not going to do it.
Yeah. We might be able to take you, Lucy, but we can't take Ricky.
Yeah, ridiculous. So what they did is they developed like a vaudeville act of their basic kind of the husband and wife routine from the show, and it became a huge hit. So CBS was like, all right. But then the final key to getting the show made is that cigarette giant Philip Morris agreed to sponsor the show. So thank you, Philip Morris, once again for your great contributions to a fucking human culture. And yeah, like I said, it was super successful and finished at #1. So I mean, man, can't argue with that. This is I mean, I don't know that I've ever really seen this show. I only know Ricky. I know the cliche
and you've
of
probably
it.
seen little scenes like, everybody's seen this one. They're in a factory. She and Ethel are in a factory, and they're loading chocolates off the conveyor belt into a box, and they can't. You can't stop.
Oh yeah, that's
So the
this show.
chocolates are coming at them really fast, and Lucy's first she's shoving them in her face trying to catch up, and then she's putting them down in her bra. She's doing
Because, yeah, I guess that has that mixes in my brain with, man, what's that later show with the two women who work in the bottling plant in Milwaukee or whatever?
Yeah,
But yeah, because when I think of factory stuff, both those things go together in my brain.
oh yeah, that's one of the Rob Reiner ones with Penny Marshall and nothing's gonna hold us
Yeah.
back now.
Doing it our way, yeah.
I can't remember the name of the show.
Laverne and Shirley.
Laverne and Shirley.
What year was that? Because that's clearly way later.
That's in the 70s.
So yeah, we'll watch the real first episode first, and then the pilot. Oh yeah, how could I forget this theme song? Well, at least they had the theme song down. At least I can't argue with that song. So yeah, I'd say the show itself was pretty decent, but yeah, that pilot really felt like doing homework, right? Just like
Yeah. The pilot was, their actual show was very good. The acting was really sharp. They fed off each other really well. It moved along really quickly. But that pilot, oh, I don't know.
yeah, like even the first episode of the show, like I was feeling like it was pretty good, but it didn't have that feeling of like top show in the whole country type thing. Like it's like they're probably not quite up to speed yet, but it's the very first episode, so you know it's and still like so the idea in the pilot was just Ethel and Lucy wanted to go to the Copacabana to hang out, but
Nightclub to celebrate an 18th anniversary.
Ricky doesn't like hanging out there because it's his job. So him
And Fred doesn't like Rocco because he just doesn't like that stuff, and he wanted to go to the fights.
yeah, so yeah, the big gag of the episode was the guys were gonna get separate dates to go to the fights with. So through some telephone shenanigans, Lucy and Ethel dressed up like weird hillbilly girls and showed up at the door, and that's the thing is it's so ridiculous that they didn't recognize that these were
Yeah.
their wives, but it really did make the show like take it to that next level where it was like really funny, and you're like, all right, I can see why this show is popular and why the show's good, like especially Lucy being the hillbilly girl with her front teeth like blacked out and carrying a jug, and like it was fully stupid, but it was really funny.
Yeah, we laughed quite a bit through that, didn't we?
Whereas, yeah, the pilot, it's interesting to see, like, yeah, they were just on the wrong course. Like, it was longer. For some reason, it was 35 minutes. And it was, instead of this domestic home life drama, it was they're living in this fancy Manhattan, like, you know, fancy pants apartment. And it's just about showbiz stuff.
Yeah.
Of, like...
well, I think they were really trying to showcase Ricky's talents.
Yeah, so it's like Ricky's in show business and he's trying to get on TV, and Lucy wants to be on TV too, but he just wants her to be a wife at home. And then half the show, yeah, was just what was probably their vaudeville act, because it was just, here's Ricky's band playing, and here's his fucking little... It's just really long, and it was just that kind of dinner theater, like, ha ha ha, that's a little bit amusing, but not actually funny. It just went on and on for so long that, like, you were like preparing files for tomorrow, and I went to go use the bathroom, and we didn't feel the need to pause the show. That's
And
a bad
even
sign.
when she came on as the clown,
Yeah, she
I
worms her
expected
way.
there to be kind of a secret mystery to it, that she would come on with face makeup on, and they wouldn't realize at first that it was her.
Right.
And then, of course, then it would be revealed. But no, she came on with no face makeup on at all, just dressed as a clown.
And even the way in the real first episode where, yeah, when she shows up is dressed up like a hillbilly girl, and like just like, oh yeah, she is funny. That's hilarious. This one just wasn't funny. Yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, like it must have been weird being an executive watching this pilot. You were saying like, yeah, I don't know if I would greenlight that show. So it's interesting that somebody saw that and they're like, okay, we can do something with this. You know, if we thread the needle just right, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll make one of the greatest TV shows of all time.
And maybe it was something like Philip Morris Cigarettes
Yeah.
coming forward and saying, maybe they were all buds or something. These are my buddies. I'll give them a break. I'll sponsor the show. Maybe that was the kickoff, because the show itself, that pilot, I don't know.
Funny too, like you can tell Philip Morris definitely had a big hand in the final show, because in that first proper episode, they just, while they're in the middle of like debating what are we going to do for the anniversary, they're like, let's just all have a smoke. And it's like you would never see that anymore. They all four of them pull out cigarettes and it's just like, it reminds me of, there's this movie came out like 10 or 15 years ago. It's called Thank You for Smoking, and it was about executives trying to get cigarettes into movies and TV shows a little bit later on in the timeline. But I always think of that because, like, I remember in the movie they were talking about, like, it was some sci-fi movie, and they're like, oh, this is going to be the greatest. Like, after the two leads have their sex scene, and there's going to be a zero-gravity smoking scene. It's going to be amazing. and like, yeah, I bet this was similar of, like, oh yeah, the script's pretty funny, but add in this scene where everybody smokes.
Everybody smokes. And they added in the other scene about smoking at the end when Ethel and Lucy were discovered for the people that they really were, because she went to get a cigarette, and she knew exactly where to go to get the cigarettes out of the drawer. And the matches, well, see, there's another little cigarette for that subtle cigarette business.
And then, of course, the sad reality of, like, I had to, just out of my own morbid curiosity, look up how everybody died. And yeah, Desi was like, he smoked all the time on the show. They moved him on to Cuban cigars a lot. And yeah, lung cancer related type stuff. And it's like, yeah, no shit. I think Lucy died of more natural stuff. But yeah, it's just like, yeesh. That's the 50s for you, though. What are you going to do? So yeah, weird. It's like neat to see the pilot, but don't bother though if you happen to be following along.
Yeah, if you can get some shows, watch the shows, and to heck with, avoid it dragged too much.
Yeah, and yeah, it really did change from that feeling of like oh, fun show to watch, to like I feel like I'm in a film studies class where we're watching like a great example of how to take an idea that's not there and then convert it into a super high-rated hit TV show. It's impressive. Like, I'd like to see some behind the scenes of like who made this turn into that, because one of them was good and one of them wasn't.
You could see little parts though in the pilot. Like, you could see little bits of what made the show that it was. Like at the very end when he thinks that she's going to tell him that she's going to have a baby, and I did something you really like, and I made you a pie. Little things like that, like just small little jokes that you saw in the actual show itself. You could see little parts of them in that pilot,
right?
But there wasn't enough that you'd pay any attention to it if you weren't looking for it.
And even like in the actual first episode, like Ricky did play a little song for like a minute, and it's like, okay, so we get to see a little bit of his music stuff, but yeah, we don't need to see. In this one, we saw his band rehearsal, his clown's entire act before Lucy comes in to take over as the clown. An entire song
that he sang, yeah,
like in the proper thing,
right? And then a second song, because when the clown didn't show up, they had to fill the spot, so he did a second song. Like, God, too much.
Yeah, so maybe it's like maybe it wasn't as tough as I think it is for the executives to be like, instead of an hour-long show with 1 million songs, tell you what, make it a half-hour sitcom. One little half of a song. We just need a sense that he's a singer and that he's good at it. We don't actually need his whole fucking
repertoire.
Yeah.